Maggie Haberman, who is a New York Times reporter, very well-known New York Times reporter, was trending on social media today. And I was wondering, why? Are people finally waking up to her insane and intense pro-establishment bias? And I was, I guess, shocked to find out that she was being dragged for something incredibly benign. Here it is.
I don't know any Democrats, honestly, Anderson, who think this is going to be an easy election. I think David can possibly speak to that more than I can, but I certainly don't know any who think this is going to be easy, in part because a lot of people are very scarred by thinking that 2016 was going to be easy. And by people, I mean Democrats were scarred by thinking that Hillary Clinton was naturally going to defeat Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton thought that, her top advisors all thought that, and they were sort of appalled and couldn't allow for the fact that he was doing as well as he was, and reality overtook them. And so I think that there are Democrats who are concerned that that is what will happen again. Look, as much trouble as Donald Trump is in politically right now, a lot of it of his own making, but certainly not all of it. Joe Biden is still a very flawed candidate. He is running a flawed campaign so far. There are still 4 months left. So a lot can happen. And I do think it is important to remember that at the end of the day, elections are still binary. And people, if they decide to vote, unless they decide to write someone in, are going to make a choice between these two men. And there are going to be a lot of people who, even if they are unhappy with Donald Trump right now, there will be people who still decide to vote for him in the end. It is a real mistake for anybody to start calling the election today.
I honestly can't believe that her statements there were considered like offensive, like so much so that her name was trending on Twitter. So many pro-Biden Twitter users were going after her. One of the writers at Mediaite, who we know well, Tommy Christopher, wrote a whole opinion piece criticizing her over those statements. I found one thing that she said in that interview objectionable, and it was when she said that Donald Trump isn't doing well. Most of it is his own making, but not all of it. Okay, so what do you mean by that? Like, I would have liked a little more clarification on that, because Donald Trump has made mistake after mistake, has been involved in scandal after scandal. He's been directly involved. So like, what is she referring to when she says, it seems like she's trying to play like the, oh, I'm a fair reporter game by saying that. But what she said about Biden was not, in my opinion, in any way offensive or incorrect. What she said about Democrats possibly feeling a little too overly confident, I think is absolutely correct. I think that we need to have our guard up if we want to beat Donald Trump and not just assume that it's going to be a cakewalk. It's not going to be a cakewalk. And of course, Biden's campaign has made mistakes. Of course, there have been flaws, right? Flaw number one that I can think of just off the top of my head was telling black voters that they're not black unless they support his candidacy. That is a flaw. That is a flaw. I mean, why is that somehow a controversial statement? I really don't get it. But what's awesome is that Maggie Haberman, for once, is the one getting gaslit. It's certainly a sight to see.
Yeah, so there's a couple of twists in the story. So first off, when I watched it, I was like, wait, I must have missed it. I got to rewind. Where's the controversy? And it turns out you're just not allowed to say anything negative about Joe Biden. And so look, political correctness is real. The people who do it the most are Republicans. Don't worry about what's factually correct. Just do whatever Donald Trump tells you, even if it's factually incorrect, because it is now the politically correct position. Like, for example, lower the sentencing of Roger Stone. That's another story that broke today. A prosecutor came out and said it was definitely done for political reasons. It doesn't matter that he was convicted. It doesn't matter what's factually correct. It only matters what's politically correct. Second worst offenders are Democratic establishment. So is Joe Biden a flawed candidate? Of course, he can't get 3 people to go to a rally. We're having a conversation as if he's a perfect candidate and no one is allowed to say that he's flawed. Nope, that you might be factually correct, guys, but you are not politically correct, and you will be punished for that, right? And so you want to know his flaws? If you're forcing me to, I'll tell you. Okay, I can go on for a couple of months, which I did, but his civil rights record is actually terrible. He's lied about it a great number of times. What he did with the criminal justice bill was awful. It imprisoned millions of Americans unjustly. What he did in the bankruptcy bill was horrific and saddled generations of Americans with debts that they could not unload. I can go on and on and on. But so the theoretical critique they had of Maggie Haberman when forced to explain why that clip was unacceptable was, no, she's doing both siderisms and false equivalency. Well, I hate false equivalency, so that's an interesting argument. So does that mean just because we despise Donald Trump, and no one despises him more than I do, that I have to lie on behalf of Joe Biden, or that Maggie Haberman has to lie on behalf of Joe Biden? So then they challenge Maggie Haberman, all right, point out his flaws. Then at that point, I don't know if she's just part of the establishment and has never read anything about Joe Biden's record. She doesn't answer. She tells what's wrong with Donald Trump, but she doesn't answer what's wrong with Joe Biden. Or if she's just scared, because she's like, oh my God, if I say anything wrong about Joe Biden, I might get fired, right? Because we got witch hunts everywhere. And so if you break any politically correct code by any set of people, you're gonna be canceled. So, but it's more likely that she is the establishment. So she barely knows anything wrong with Joe Biden. So she says he's a little flawed just to seem fair, even though she hasn't bothered to look into what his flaws are. So she can't even name them. But the establishment says, not good enough, okay? Throw her into the water, let's see if she floats. So Maggie, you were part of that brigade for a long, long time. So we're here, ironically, to defend you, although you deserve no defense.
100%. I totally agree with you. And by the way, look, I read Tommy Christopher's opinion piece on this, and there are parts of it I agree with, but what he's bringing up has nothing to do with what she said in her statement during that interview. So for instance, he mentions in 2016, her reporting wasn't helpful in defeating Donald Trump because she seemed to be harping on Hillary Clinton's emails. Okay, that's a fair assessment. So, and it also kind of gave me a little bit of a peek into why there was such a negative reaction to Haberman, because I think that people are and fairly obsessed, right, to get rid of Donald Trump, to get him voted out of office. And that is a legitimate desire. I definitely sign on to that desire. And so I think there's a little bit of a worry that if you give reporters an inch in criticizing Biden, that things could be blown out of proportion, and then there could be a possible but her emails type story that derails his candidacy. I don't know if that's really what they're thinking. I feel like that could be some of the reasoning behind it. But of course, Biden is a flawed candidate. Of course, his campaign is flawed. That doesn't mean that you're trying to help Donald Trump win. That means that you're, raising some red flags and urging the campaign to be aware of it and to move forward in the best possible way to actually beat Donald Trump. Being overly confident in any situation where there's a race or some sort of competition is just a bad idea. And we saw what happened in 2016. We shouldn't be willing to make the same mistakes again, period. That doesn't mean that Maggie Haberman's like a huge Trump supporter, which she's now being accused of. She's both being accused of being a Bernie bro, which is laughable, and at the same time of being a Trump supporter, which anyway, it's just nonsense, absolute nonsense. But hey, Maggie Haberman, how do you like being gaslit?
Okay, so look, one last thing on this. Look at the assumptions built into these attacks. The assumption is the mainstream media is supposed to work on behalf of the Democratic establishment. So if you don't do that, you've committed a cardinal offense, okay? Or a cardinal sin. And so there are enemies of the establishment. Yes, Donald Trump, but also progressives. We lie about them or we attack them nonstop. But most importantly, we play defense for this Democratic establishment. And we cover up all the things that are wrong with them. And if anybody dares to talk about it, even in a vague reference like Maggie Haberman, we seek and destroy. Maggie forgot the rules for a second there. And she almost paid the price. I don't know the internal politics of New York Times. I don't know if she got a talking to, but Blue Check Twitter was very upset. Remember, Maggie, the media does not do news, it does propaganda. That's what they were trying to remind her of.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.